It is the day after Donald Trump imposed tariffs, very steep, in fact the steepest in the world, up to 50% on Indian exports to the United States. As of last year, India exported over $87 billion of merchandise goods to the US. Now, over 50% of that $87 billion unfortunately stands to be tariffed at 50% or more. New Delhi has called this move unfair and unjustified. While China and Europe continue similar trade without any penalties, India's finance ministry has warned of long-term impacts and urgent talks that are required to try and nudge the principles towards moving towards some kind of a trade arrangement. At the same time, India is also looking at diversifying its markets. Remember, at the end of the day, India's exports to the US are under a fifth, under 20%. Some labor-intensive sectors like textiles, gems and jewelry, leather, footwear, textiles and apparel, all of this will get affected disproportionately. But overall, the need of the hour is for the Indian export basket to be more diversified away from the United States. Sources in the government say that there is going to be the launch of an outreach program, particularly in key sectors that will be affected, textiles being one of them, to try and counter the blow, to try and cushion the blow of the Trump-imposed tariffs, while at the same time also extending the import duty exemption on cotton until the end of this year, until the 31st of December 2025. Meanwhile, it's not like the Trump decision and the decision by the Trump administration to impose 50% tariffs on a country that is friendly, a strategic partner, a partnership that's been built over the last 2.5 decades. The US House Democrats from the Foreign Affairs Committee, which is an influential committee, has oversight over foreign policy decisions. They have come out and slammed Donald Trump for singling out India over buying Russian oil. They say that it hurts Americans, it sabotages the US-India relationship.
This is Kamalika from CNN News18. My question is, since Australia does not believe in such tariffs, how Australia is dealing with the US tariff thing, and how Australia sees the recent tariff war that is going between India and US?
Yeah, look, we're a country that believes in free and fair trade. We believe that the best way of ensuring prosperity for our workers and our country is to continue with free, fair and open trade. So we don't support the imposition of tariffs, whether they be on Australia or India. Obviously, your relationship with the United States is something for you to work through. But only this week I've met with officials of the United States government to make it clear that our view that the 10% tariff that they've imposed on Australia is not the right way to go, and that we will continue to push our argument that the American government should remove those tariffs.
But the Trump administration doesn't seem to be taking the foot off the pedal in terms of trying to put pressure on India on what it perceives as India buying Russian oil and thereby contributing to Putin's war machine. India has, of course, completely rejected that. In fact, the foreign minister has said that the framing of this as an oil issue is completely wrong. But the Trump administration doesn't seem to be letting go of, at least not as quickly. In fact, Donald Trump's close aide and senior trade representative, Peter Navarro, has made a stunning remark as far as the Ukraine war is concerned, calling it Modi's war, alleging that India's import of Russian oil is fueling Moscow's aggression and it is burdening US taxpayers. He's even suggested a 25% tariff cut if India were to stop buying Russian oil, adding that the path to peace in Ukraine runs through New Delhi. Navarro also took aim at Delhi's ties with Beijing, warning India that getting in bed with authoritarians is not going to help India. He also reminded that China was the one that invaded Aksai Chin and other Indian territories, and hence they are not exactly India's friends. Let's listen in to the outspoken Peter Navarro.
Look, it's real easy. India can get 25% off tomorrow if it stops buying Russian oil and helping to feed the war machine.
Not sending that signal.
They're not. And look, here's the thing. I'm puzzled, okay? Because Modi's a great leader. These people this is a mature democracy with intelligent people running it. And they look us bald-faced in the eye on the tariff part and say, we don't have the highest tariffs in the world, when in fact they do. There's no dispute about that if you look at the numbers. When India buys Russian oil at a discount, and then Indian refiners in partnership in India with Russian refiners make that and sell it at a premium to the rest of the world, right? Russia uses the money it gets to fund its war machine, kill more Ukrainians, and then the next thing that happens, of course, is Ukraine comes to us and Europe and says, give us some more money. So everybody in America loses because of what India is doing. The consumers and businesses and everything lose, and workers lose because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we got to fund Modi's war, okay? The road to peace runs at least partly right through New Delhi.
Putin's war?
I mean Modi's war.
Let me ask
because the road to peace runs in part through New Delhi. The authoritarians, China, you've been at quiet war with them for decades. They invaded Aksai-Chin and all your territory. These are not your friends, folks, okay? And the Russians, I mean, come on.
But it is going to have a series of impacts. Certainly in the short term, there is going to be a lot of pain. We have a series of ground reports from some of our reporters from export hubs, places like Surat, Ludhiana, Tirupur, Delhi, Gurgaon and Noida. These are going to be some of the worst affected places because these are export-dependent textile hubs or gems and jewelry hubs, leather export destinations. These are particularly badly affected because they are dependent on exports to the United States in many of these sectors. They're also very labor-intensive, whether they happen to be apparel and textiles. 30% of India's textile exports go to the US. Same is the case with gems and jewelry. Over $10 billion now under jeopardy. There's also leather exports. So we've sent out our reporters to a series of these export hubs to try and get a sense of what the feeling on the ground is, whether orders have been halted, whether exports currently have been put on pause, and what the hope there really is. Will they find diversified markets, or Prime Minister Modi is attending the SCO summit, which is being hosted by China this year in the northern city of Tianjin, just about an hour's drive away from the capital, Beijing. So what is the SCO and why is Prime Minister Modi attending this summit? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a major Eurasian intergovernmental body. Its focus is on political, economic and security cooperation. The SCO was founded back in June of 2001, essentially by China and Russia, along with the 5 Central Asian republics, that's Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. It evolved from the earlier format. It was called the Shanghai 5, which dates all the way back to 1996. It got formalized at a summit-level understanding in 2001. The SCO seeks to bolster mutual trust, regional stability, counterterrorism, and promote development under the ethos of the Shanghai spirit. Now, originally, it was thought to be a security-centered multi-alignment platform, but now the SCO has expanded to economic, cultural, and infrastructure cooperation. India joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a full member in 2017, along with Pakistan. But initially, both India and Pakistan had become observer countries in 2005. Once India and Pakistan joined in 2017, this highlighted a significant shift in the SCO's reach as well as geopolitical weight. So it was no longer just China, Russia, and the 5 Central Asian republics. It now expanded to a large part of South Asia. So why is India joining and part of what is essentially seen as an alliance led by China? That's a fair question to ask. Now, here's what is in it for India. India's participation in the SCO offers it the following strategic benefits. Number one, it is a platform which helps it engage with Central Asian countries, their resources, their key markets. Central Asia has vast energy reserves, and the chance for India to develop overland connectivity. This is a huge economic driver for India. India has been talking about the North-South Trans Corridor, as it's called, which will basically give it overland access bypassing Pakistan through Afghanistan, Iran, and then into the Central Asian republics. This is something that India has been talking about and developing for the last 20 years. So the SCO serves as an important platform for that. It also gives, very crucially, India access to what is called the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, or RATS. RATS is a mechanism that's been designed by China and Russia and the Central Asian republics, primarily for security cooperation and for anti-terror operations. The SCO has this Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure, RATS, which offers India counter-terrorism cooperation as well as intelligence sharing, which is crucial because India has been a victim of terrorism emanating primarily from Pakistan, but also from Afghanistan. The SCO also offers a platform for strategic autonomy. India does not want to be seen as an ally of the United States or in the Western Bloc. Therefore, being part of an alliance which has China and Russia in the room when these conversations are happening, it is a demonstrable platform for India to demonstrate its strategic autonomy. It also helps India balance amongst the great power competition that is going on between China and the United States. There is also a chance to try and temper some of the more extremist influences, given Pakistan is also a member of the SCO. The SCO also creates new areas of cooperation as far as India is concerned. India's priority areas, whether it is startups, traditional medicine, youth empowerment, digital inclusion. It gives India to shape some of these narratives in a platform which has China and Russia, some of the biggest powers in the world. Despite the criticism that the SCO is seen by the West as a vehicle primarily for China and Chinese interests, India has leveraged the SCO to assert its independent foreign policy as well as further regional engagement. By engaging within the SCO, India maintains a platform to try and balance out China's ambitions and also prevent diplomatic isolation. Remember, all other SCO members and some of the observer members as well, who've not become full-fledged members up until now, the likes of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, etc., they all support Chinese projects, infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative. India has not supported the BRI for its own sovereignty concerns. Now, while the West often sees the SCO as a conduit for Chinese influence, particularly given China's economic heft and also the billions of dollars it's spending on the BRI, India's choice to participate in the SCO reflects a pragmatic, multi-vector foreign policy. India uses its presence in the SCO to project itself as an independent actor with deep ties both to East and to West. However, on issues like terrorism, which is a core concern for India, China has often refused to condemn Pakistan and Pakistan-originated terror directed at India at various SCO fora in the past. The latest one was back in June when Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was in Shanghai for the Defense Ministers' SCO meeting, and Pakistan and China refused to mention the recent Pahalgam terrorist attack. Rajnath Singh and India thereof refused to sign the joint statement that emanated from the Defense Ministers' meeting. After the 2020 Galwan Valley border clash between India and China, which resulted in casualties on both sides, it triggered a prolonged standoff. In fact, India-China relations hit a historic low over those 5 years from 2020 up until the fall of 2024. Multiple rounds of military-to-military dialogue, dialogue between the diplomats, and finally, it culminated in a stepwise de-escalation. That de-escalation was agreed to on the sidelines of last year's SCO summit, which was hosted in Kazan, Russia. That's where Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping agreed that the first step would be to de-escalate. There are still 50,000 troops from both sides that are in a standoff position on either side of the line of actual control, but they have de-escalated from October 2024 onwards. Both countries also began re-engaging. They resolved some of the patrolling arrangements which were in place before the 2020 Galwan clashes. They've also resumed direct flights, tourist visas for both Indian and Chinese tourists, as well as cultural exchanges. They've also agreed to stabilize the line of actual control and resume limited economic and people-to-people interactions. Prime Minister Modi is returning to China for the first time since 2018, where he will be taking part in the SCO summit from the 31st of August to the 1st of September. It reflects both a degree of necessity. Remember, both India and China are big powers in the Indo-Pacific. their economies are entangled, their border is entangled as well, and there is also a degree of strategic calculation. India has to use dialogue and multilateral platforms like the SCO to try and manage the internal conflicts and competition that it has with China. Both leaders, in fact, resolved in Kazan last year that they cannot allow differences to become disputes and they cannot allow competition to become conflict. But there is a big elephant in the room as far as this year's SCO is concerned, and that is US President Donald Trump and his aggressive trade posture and tariffs, which has profoundly impacted India's trade as well as its diplomatic engagements. The US imposed tariffs up to 50% on Indian exports, largely aimed at curbing India's import of Russian crude oil. This is the highest tariff on any country in the world. India feels it is unfairly being singled out for importing Russian oil, even though China imports more Russian oil. This has strained long-standing ties between Delhi and Washington, and it has also threatened cooperation within Quad. Remember, India is the host of the Quad summit later this year, and if the summit were to happen, then President Donald Trump will have to travel to India. So far, there is no confirmation that the summit will happen itself. As a consequence of this blow-up in the trade arena because of the Trump-imposed tariffs, as a consequence of that, India is now forced to turn closer towards both China and Russia. It is engaging much more deeply in both SCO as well as BRICS. In fact, India will be the host of BRICS next year, when India will have to play host both to Xi Jinping as well as to Vladimir Putin of Russia. Analysts note that Trump's strategy of pushing India on the tariff issue may have backfired, unintentionally or maybe intentionally pushing India into the corner of Russia and China, and thereby strengthening BRICS as well as encouraging the global south to coordinate more closely. In response, India is pursuing a policy of diversification on the one hand, moving towards China and Russia, but with caveats attached, and also signaling defiance to Trump and his tariffs. India is trying to bring a degree of balance between its Western ties and Eurasian groupings like the SCO and BRICS. And this weekend, you will see more evidence of that play itself out in Tianjin. All right, so what does India now have to do? The 50% tariffs are a reality, 25% reciprocal tariffs, 25% what they're called as oil tariffs. India, of course, feels it's unfair, it's unjustified because India is the only country that's being singled out. But here's the rub of the truth, and that is that these tariffs are a reality, and they're going to be around for a while before maybe Donald Trump and the Trump administration see reason. But how do we deal with this? Is this a wake-up call for Indian industry, for Indian exporters in particular? And can India make this into some kind of a 1991 moment, if you will? I'm joined and I'm coming to you from the Vijay Chowk, overseeing some of the biggest sort of power houses, as it were. These are where the ministries are housed, and they're all trying to figure out what is the best foot forward, what is the best possible response to the Trump tariffs. I'm now joined with me, Mr. Ajay Srivastav is the founder of the Global Trade Research Initiative, and joining us from Mumbai is one of corporate India's well-known faces. Sunil Alag is Chairman and Managing Director of SK Advisors. Srivastav, let me start with you first. You've written a detailed sort of paper, we read about it yesterday, about what are the sectors that are going to be affected, the labor-intensive sectors like textiles and apparel, leather, gems and jewelry, etc. This is now a reality. This is something that India and Indian exporters have to live with. What are some of the mitigating avenues available? How can India sort of mitigate for the sectors that are most affected the effects of these Trump tariffs?
So, different firms are trying different strategies. For example, the largest firms, they are most flexible. For example, some of the garment firms, they have production units in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and South Korea. So they will be using these locations for making their goods and exporting to the US. Some of them, they are shifting, for example, diamond processors, they will be shifting to Antwerp. Some, they are talking about shifting their labor force artisans to, say, UAE, Fujairah, and doing the cutting and polishing and exporting from there. Others, for example, global big buyers, they are saying, suppose they are buying from India, Bangladesh and Vietnam, all the three locations. They are saying, India, okay, till yesterday you were supplying for our EU market, US market and other markets. Now you focus only on EU markets. I'll be asking Bangladesh, which was also supplying to all the three markets, to focus on US markets. So this is also being talked. So this is about the big firms. They have certain more options about this. The smaller firms, people who are making bland products, they are in trouble. But when I talk to certain people, like some pump manufacturer is there, he says, I spoke to my buyer in the US and he says, okay, 50% tariff, okay, I'll bear the cost for 3-4 months, then we'll see.
Okay, so they're saying that, okay, let's see, maybe this will go away in 3-4 months, maybe there'll be better sense that prevails. But the idea that some of our smaller manufacturers can diversify their market a little away from the US to maybe Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, etc., how easy or difficult is that?
So diversification of markets is very difficult. We talk about this a lot, but it's very difficult. I'll give you one example. For example, China currently is offering 30% straight discount on, say, yarn in African market. They are doing the same thing for European market also. And they are saying, you can pay us back in 3 years. In India, the legal limit is 1 year. We don't have so much, so we can never buy the concessions China is offering. And now, tariff is not imposed only on India. Of course, we are the highest category. It's on everybody. Everybody is searching for the different markets. It's going to be difficult. So people who wants to diversify their product base, for example, in garments, people who are making embroidered products or children products, because the factories require certification, safety certification, they may survive for some time. But others like terry towel, furnishing, they are going to be in tough time.
Sunil, everybody is looking at this and saying that, look, maybe reason will prevail in 3 months down the line. India can still live with the first part of the 25%, which is the reciprocal tariffs. But the second part, which is the oil tariffs, that is something that would make Indian goods very uncompetitive, if you will, in the US markets. Many are also asking, could this spur our industry, whether it's big size industry or medium or small size industry, to take this up as a challenge, to try and diversify their markets, to try and indigenize a lot of their production and even, their selling, sell to the Indian consumers at the end of the day. Do you see this as a 1991 moment, or do you see this is far too challenging, we're far too integrated into the global sort of merchandise system, and therefore we'll find it difficult to sort of mitigate the Trump tariffs?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, the Indian consumption market, the Indian market, is so huge that America and China and India and everyone wants this market. Now, it's Indians who have to now look at it from another point of view altogether. That, look, domestic consumption is the most important. And therefore, before you look at diversifying international markets and before you look at anything, you have to look at domestic consumption. Domestic consumption is the main area in which this will work. And this will not work if you work only in domestic markets where you export and where you actually lie down and you say that, look, now that the exports have gone, we are gone. Look, we cannot say that. And therefore, whether it will be Trump himself has changed every 3 months or every 4 months. Every 5 months he changes. The question is, for 4 months, we have to tighten our belts, whether it's the Indian consumer or the Indian industry or the government. We have to tighten our belts for the first 4 or 5 months. Now, GST is one area where the government is coming up, and therefore the budget is coming up on 1st Feb. And therefore, the direct consumption in India is the most important, as far as I'm concerned.
No, but, the idea, and I'll ask Mr. Srivastava this first, India is not the first country that Trump imposed these very steep tariffs on. He did that with China. I think it went up to almost 145, 150% tariffs, and then they had to climb down because China hit back with the rare earths, the semiconductors, the magnets. So they had leverage. What leverage, if any, does India have to respond to this?
We have a big leverage, as big as the rare earths of China. We don't talk about this, of course. Currently all the US tech firms, they get data from, we are the biggest generator of data after China. China is close for them. Yeah. Suppose we tell US, you are getting most data from us, you are using that to develop your AI tools, and all your other developments are hinging upon this. It is a great leverage for us. We must talk about this.
But Trump has been talking about this digital tax, what used to be called here in India as Google tax, and the government sort of reconsidered it. He's saying that's also an unfair trade practice. Anybody who takes a digital tax, for example, European Union, he's threatening more sort of tariffs on them.
Trump can call anything. Like you rightly said, he imposed tariff of 145% on China, but he had to relent when China talked back with the rare earth thing. So we have to talk it back. Right now, Trump is in good position because nobody is talking back to him. Only China talked back so far to him, and India, of course, India did not sacrifice the way European Union or Japan or Korea sacrificed. I mean, I laud Indian leadership for all those things. So we have a leverage in terms of data. We must develop that and talk to it back. And digital tax, we don't take digital tax. And suppose tomorrow we want to take it because the whole of the world is turning digital. Who is Mr. Trump to decide what we have to do as a sovereign country?
So, Sunil, what we have seen from countries around the world in the way in which they've dealt with these Trump tariffs, there are basically two models. There is the European Union model, Japan, South Korea to some extent, basically go to Trump and say, okay, boss, you do what you have to do, we will bear with the pain. Basically what they call in the US, kiss the ring. And then you have the Chinese model where they stood up to Trump. They matched him tariff for tariff, and finally they had that leverage through the form of rare earths and semiconductors. What is it that India has in terms of leverage? So far, India's position has been a mix of both. You are not, kowtowing to Trump. At the same time, you don't have the leverage that China has in terms of the rare earths. But you're standing up. You're saying that, look, we are not going to, bend over downwards for you. But at the same time, we will stand our ground. We may not have any instruments to hit you back with. Certainly, India is not imposing any retaliatory tariffs against America just yet. But what's stopping India from doing that?
No, look, as far as Mr. Modi is concerned, India comes first. And look, Russian oil, if it comes, we don't buy all the oil from Russia. We from the Middle East, we buy from America, we buy from Russia as well. Now, if 25-30% of the Russian oil comes in because of the price, then India comes first. He will then buy from Russia only oil, which is 25 or 30% or 40% of India's market. Look, he's a bully of the first order. Russia stood up in Alaska in the meeting when he tried to get a peace going, and when China stood up. It's about time India stood up. Now, India has got a lot of data, a lot of, as Mr. Srivastava has said, look, all the information that is there, all the information that is there, now we can tax everybody else, because ultimately the American consumer has to pay for Trump. And therefore, when Trump realizes that the American consumer is involved, then he will listen to us. And therefore, we must now put pressure on the American consumer rather than Trump himself.
So when does that sort of come to start? When does that pain, Mr. Srivastava, come to start feeling on the American consumer? Because look, there is a very economic reason why goods are coming from India or China or Bangladesh or Vietnam, because it's cheaper for the American consumer. Now, if it's going to impose these tariffs, then it's going to make it more expensive ultimately for the American consumer. So far, we are not seeing any evidence of it. Do you see that happening 6 months down the line, a year down the line, when the American consumer starts feeling the pain of this?
It will start happening immediately, and reports will be seeing the reports very soon. Very soon, because 27th August is just yesterday, and data takes about 1 month to 40 days time to emerge. And we'll see a lot of videos on the social media of the angry US consumers comparing the old prices with the new prices. Immediately they can see the prices increase by 20%, 30%, 40% for most products. And I don't think Mr. Trump can handle that. Remember, this happened on April 9. On April 2, he imposed high tariffs, and between April 2 and April 9, China and Japan, they sold their treasury bonds, and there was a mayhem in their markets. And that made Trump relent, and he postponed the tariff for 90 days. I think that moment is going to come very soon internally, if not externally.
So you're saying one of the pain points could be if the American markets eventually, the pain of the tariffs, if it's going to be felt in the US capital markets, then that's a language Trump understands and will respond to.
I would like to add one more thing. You were talking about the leverage. We have one great leverage. Trump always talks about trade deficit of $45 billion.
Yes,
American firms earn more than $80 billion from India, from their Indian operations. Indian students, they pay $15 billion worth of tuition fee annually, and $10 billion in living expenses. So overall, they earn more than $100 billion from India. We have to talk about that also. That's also a great leverage.
In fact, today I think there's a circular that's out from the US government suggesting that they will relook at visas for students. But Sunil Alag, I'll give you the final word. One area where, slowly murmurs are emerging from the MAGA base, and I think people like Howard Lutnick have been talking about it, Indian and Indian Americans on H-1B visas and on student visas. There's suddenly a lot of noise around it saying, there's a cottage industry running and they're taking advantage of the US system, so on and so forth. Again, do you see that as leverage that India can use against America, or will that again be a pain point? So far, he's not turned his attention to the services. He's focused on manufacturing. But how do we deal with it if the attention now turns to that?
See, we are a country of 1.4 billion, and therefore we suffer pain for about 3 or 4 months. That's not an issue with us. Look, as far as I'm concerned, the Indian consumption market is as important to America as it is to India. And therefore, the consumption market in India itself will raise the issue. Therefore, the tourism, everything has to go up. Now, the employment which is coming from wherever your textiles or gems or jewelry, where the exports have gone up, that doesn't matter because 5% is not a large amount. 20% is on everybody. 25% is on Indians. 5% is the extra pain which we will tolerate.
No, but that's aside of the other 25%, which you're saying will go away in a few months.
Will not. 25% is on the entire area of oil. Now, if we will buy from, it's not that we are buying from Russia alone. The Middle East, when we buy, if he puts another 5% on 25% on the Middle East, on American oil, on European oil, on Russian oil, we don't buy from, but Russians have been our partners, come no matter what it is. Trump is driving us towards China. The geopolitics of it, for 1 or 2 years, we will become close to China itself. And therefore, China, Russia and India together will put pressure on Trump. Now, it's a question of we have to go in with our eyes open in the new geopolitics that is coming up.
All right. Sunil Alag and Mr. Srivastav, thank you very much for joining us on this special broadcast of Tacks coming to you live from New Delhi. It is really a big challenge, no doubt about it, but India has surmounted bigger challenges than this. Look no further than the 1991 debt crisis that we had, the balance of payments crisis. We overcame that, and we are now the 4th largest economy in the world. There's no reason why we can't deal with the immediate and short-term pain of the Trump tariffs.